Which of the following is worse? A woman's fear of an unwanted pregnancy or a man's fear of 18 years of child support?
A man's fear of the 18 years of child support
Why?
because he's stuck paying for a child for 18 years, and I don't think that's something he would want to do unless.
Unwanted pregnancy.
Why?
Nobody wants a baby that they can't provide for.
Wouldn't that be the same thing for a man who can't provide for a child for 18 years?
Absolutely. So they're very similar. They're very similar. However, like a guy not providing, you know what? But a woman has a choice in that matter. So I guess you're right. I guess maybe the guy is worse because they don't have a choice. It's the woman's right to terminate the pregnancy or continue with it. So, yeah.
I'll say, as somebody who worked at a child support agency for 5 years, I would say the guys, because we have a very robust system that's put in place in order to make sure that we catch you if there's a child out there who needs support. And there's also a robust welfare system to help out the single mom. So,
Have you ever paid or received child support, and if so, how did it affect your life?
Yes, I have paid child support, and I wouldn't say it affects my life too much because I love my child. But at the end of the day, it is stupid when I do spend time with my child, if that makes sense.
I paid child support, still paying it right now, and we get 50-50 custody. And for the most part, you know, he has the equal lifestyle. So the fact that I'm paying and she has never had to pay a dime, it's kind of ridiculous.
How difficult was it to pay child support?
It was pretty difficult. I mean, I was getting screwed when I first got started paying, so I had to spend more money on top of already what I'm paying to get a lawyer to lower my payments down, and the court seemed to favor her over me.
Couldn't get a job during COVID, lost income, couldn't get a passport, and it's still difficult to this day to pay that back child support off of COVID.
It was difficult at first, but now I have a better job, so it's a little bit easier. But that doesn't mean that it makes it right. If that makes sense.
Do you know how child support is calculated?
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
Yes, according to the higher earning parents' income.
Should it be based purely on income or on the child's actual needs?
Income.
to be honest, as someone who calculated child support for a long time, I think it should be based on actual needs. And this gets into issues with custody and stuff like that. But first of all, child support's not even going to see what the money gets spent on at the end of the day. And then you have men from different income stratifications. And, you know, even though the judges can deviate, most of the cases we make are just kind of haphazardly made with this calculator. So it'll go in there and it'll spit out some really high child support amounts that kind of are almost a pseudo alimony, you know, if they weren't married or something like that. So I think there needs to be some kind of reform there, because I would see guys telling me they're going to be like, you know, how am I supposed to pay this? You see what my bills are. I'm going to be homeless. Like, what am I going to do? Then nobody's going to get anything. So I saw that a lot. And even the state recognizes that's an issue.
Why does a child's cost increase depending on the father's salary, but not the mother's?
Usually the father earns more. Duh. That's pretty basic. Like, duh.
Does basing child support on income incentivize predatory behavior among women seeking wealthier men?
Oh, 100%. Women prey on men who have money and status in order for them to be able to do what they want in this world.
A lot of women have babies purposely or intentionally by wealthier men with the intention of having financial security for themselves.
It's pretty common for women now to, you know, make a living off of child support. And if they're running out, then just, you know, get knocked up again. And there you go. You have another form of payment.
Doesn't that make you a high value target?
Absolutely, men, even for more than just child support, men are high value targets in society more so than women are.
So why are dating coaches telling men to become these high value targets?
Because, you know, women, it's the attraction that allures men. Men, on the other hand, we have to be provider. We have to have something to offer and to give. So coaches, you know, you want to be handsome. You want to be, you know, wanted by these women. What do you have to offer them?
So why would men want to continue being providers when they're more likely to be punished for it?
I feel like most men, that's what they want to do. In all honesty, they want to lead. They want to, take control kind of thing. So
See, that's the thing. If the system doesn't change and the women keep getting away with certain abuse of child support, it will continue.
Should a wealthy NFL player pay more for a can of Coke than a bus driver just because he can afford it?
Absolutely not.
If not, why should the amount of alimony or child support be higher simply because one person earns more?
That's a beautiful question. I don't think that's valid at all. I don't think that's right whatsoever, because at the end of the day, there should be a precedent and a standard that people obtain and go by instead of how much someone makes, because you don't know what it took someone to get to that point. So I feel like it's wrong taking the money away from them.
It kind of goes against market economics. It's like being punished for being more successful. It's like we live in a society where we want people to produce, make money, pay taxes or whatever. And it's like you got one person here who we don't even know if they have a job or if they're selling stuff on the corner. I can't even get money from them. They can have like 6 kids and pay way less. Then you have one successful guy and he's paying like, $15,000 a month. How does that make sense?
Is child support about maintaining a child's basic needs or maintaining a mother's pre-divorce lifestyle?
Pre-divorce lifestyle a lot of the times, because like I said before, it doesn't really go to the kid a majority of the time. It usually goes to the mother and what she wants to do with the money.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be about divorce. It's just the women are always getting a higher lifestyle off of the salaries that they're getting from the man, and the men are getting lower.
If financial obligations are adjusted by ability to pay, does that mean parenting is about money rather than care or responsibility?
It should be about care, but it seems like the courts are always just focused on the money.
Now, parenting obviously involves all those things, but the way our system is set up is that we have this very definite divide between what child support's doing and then what private family law is doing with custody. So we've created this very powerful system, which is, federally funded, and it's only concerned with the financial aspect. It doesn't care about the other stuff. If dad says she won't let me see him, whatever it is, we're just like, hey, you got to go to private family law, file your own motions, do your own stuff, come tell us if something changes. But really, it's like you have these compartmentalized systems, so they don't really care about each other. But child support really doesn't do that, especially the agency. They're just like, what is the custody? And then when they tell us that's all we care about, and we just plug it into the calculator, boop, there's your child support.
Why are men overwhelmingly the ones paying child support rather than women?
Because again, men are seen as providers. So the women, they're more fragile and just damsels according to the court. So I've never heard of a mother having to pay the father child support.
Does this imply a bias that men are less fit to be primary caregivers?
I believe there is that bias. Yes.
We live in a time of feminism, women's rights, and equal opportunity employment. Women take the same jobs as men in a lot of places and industries, but I think we still have this carryover from prior times and a sort of cultural expectation that a man isn't masculine unless he provides. So a lot of guys play the provider role, and what happens is when that relationship breaks up, when you punch that into the calculator, it equals the man paying the woman, especially depending on custody. So,
why do so many women believe that child support orders can simply be ignored or dodged?
You mean in the sense of like them receiving them?
Like deadbeat dads who don't pay.
Oh, okay. Just because it's very easy for a man to pick up and go and not say anything and just disappear.
But won't child support take away their passports and their driver's license?
Yeah, but I've known a lot of men that won't keep steady jobs. Whenever child support tries to kind of come after them, they will switch jobs kind of thing. I know a few real deadbeats.
What is typically bought with child support money?
An increase in lifestyle, rent, clothes, and you can't be 100% certain that all of that is going to the child. And from what I've seen, maybe 30% ever goes to the child.
From my experience, drugs, alcohol, and it never really put towards the child, because at the end of the day, I'm still taking care of the child and spending my money and paying child support. So that's just my experience. I can't speak for everybody else, though.
Should child support recipients be required to provide receipts proving the money was spent directly on the child?
Oh, 100%. I've been trying to push for that forever.
I guess from a child support officer's perspective, there's an enforcement issue with that, because it's like, it's going to cost a lot more money for the state to have caseworkers parsing through all this information. Now with AI and things like that, I mean, we can probably get it to a point to figure this out. I don't doubt technology, but that's been the issue up until now.
Why isn't child support distributed through a monitored debit card system similar to food stamps or other government aid programs.
That's a beautiful idea. I think this is exactly how it should go, is that you should be limited to what you can buy and what you can do with the money. But that'll never change.
Who benefits from the lack of financial transparency in child support spending?
Who benefits, you said? Definitely the mom.
I mean, the mothers are always the one that that gets the benefit out of anything that goes on in the courts when it comes to a man and a woman.
There is a child support debit card if you don't want it direct deposited in your bank account conveniently. So the state will issue that, but nobody's looking at, some ledger of what the purchases were or anything like that. They'll give you a card, like if it's like a food stamps or something like that, or cash aid, but nobody's looking at that to see where did this get spent at.
Who benefits from the lack of financial transparency in child support spending?
How about this? The primary custodial parent who makes less money.
If a father needs a judge's approval to terminate parental rights, should a woman also need a judge's approval to terminate a pregnancy?
Yes, I think that would be equally righted.
Should parental rights and parental responsibilities be treated equally for both sexes?
Yes, it should be.
Why?
Because it throws everything off balance and it makes it unfair on the other behalf.
Equal parenting equals a better livelihood for the child, because at the end of the day, if it's equal, the child is getting what it needs on both ends from a father and a mother, because a father and a mother give different traits to a child.
Why does the state consider being biologically the father proof enough to pay child support, but not to get custody?
Dude, I don't know. That makes no sense if you really boil it down like that. Because at the end of the day, if you're paying child support in any shape or form, I feel like you should have the ability to see your child.
Because child support is put in place to benefit the child and the mother. But the society, the courts don't see the father's role in the house as important as it needs to be. They see the woman takes care of the child for 9 months in the womb, but the father is he just spits and he's done. But that's not how it works.
A lot of that just has to do with how recent genetic tests actually are. They were like a nuclear bomb in the space. And with the genetic test, you can definitively point to one person and say, you are the father. So the state considers that enough to say, well, time to pay child support. We know who the dad is.
Why do you have to have a relationship with the child to get custody, but not to pay child support?
Well, a lot of that depends on circumstance. And, before genetic testing, the way to establish a parental relationship with the child, to establish paternity in these kind of wiry cases, was to figure out what the relationship between the child and the alleged father actually was. So if you guys cohabitated and lived in the same household and the kid knows you as dad and all these kinds of things, that makes a case for having custody. But, if this kid was born from a one-night stand and the kid's 5, and then suddenly you learn about him last week because child support's coming after you, it's a completely different circumstance, and it's going to affect the best interests of the child, whether or not you guys should have a custody relationship or not. So the court's going to look at that and make a determination.
What's the best time to learn about child support? When you've been served with legal paperwork, or when you're out drunk trying to get laid?
I truly believe that having an option of learning about child support in school is probably the best thing for everybody.
So when you're in high school and they start teaching you about the sexual organs and things of that nature, they should inform you about what will happen once you get someone pregnant and the things that you will end up having to pay. So that should be knowledge that is taught when being taught about sexual, sexual activities.
What would you do if you found out the child you were paying for wasn't biologically yours?
Oof, man, I don't even know how I would feel. That would be horrible.
I'd expect to be reimbursed every cent that I paid.
Should paternity testing be mandatory before issuing a child support order?
Yes.
Should it be mandatory at birth, or should it be mandatory before issuing an order? And the fact is it depends on how paternity was established. If you were married and there's a presumption of paternity and the kid's 5 and you've been living together and now you're getting split up, there's not, that's it. Challenging paternity presumption on that, I've never seen somebody undo it, because it's over the 2 years. Now, if you guys had a kid and you never lived together and you never signed any paperwork at the hospital, and then one day child support calls you up and it's just like, hey, this lady you had a one-night stand with or whatever actually had a kid, and she's naming you as the father, you have a right to ask for a genetic test. A lot of guys, I mean, if they throw the paperwork away and then we default the judgment after they've been personally served, that's it, no genetic test. Your default's at the father. So you have to be aware of the timeline. Is paternity already established and what your rights are at any given point in that timeline?
Why is a man still sometimes required to pay child support even after proving he isn't the biological father?
Because it's already set in stone in the courts, and the courts are too lazy to appease or do anything about it.
Well, a lot of men that signs the birth certificate, it certify them as the father until DNA, prove otherwise.
If justice is about fairness, how is forcing an innocent man to pay considered just?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that whatsoever. I don't think it should be considered just at all because it's trash.
They say that it's because it's for the child's well-being, but I feel like the mother should be held accountable in some sense.
The courts look at the relationship you have with the child. So like that depends on cohabitation, how long paternity has been established for, and it also depends on the paternity fraud laws in your specific state. Now, California specifically, if what they'll say is best interest of the child, and if, this kid's calling you dad and knows you as dad, the state's going to say there's going to be a significant psychological harm to the child to undo paternity. Maybe if you know who the guy is and you guys can facilitate some sort of adoption and everybody's happy. I never saw that, but maybe. But for the most part, they're going to look at the best interest of the child as they state they are.
If justice is about fairness, how is forcing an innocent man to pay considered just?
Well, I guess, to be honest, I can't say it's considered just, especially if they were lied to and it is a very real paternity fraud. It's not that. I think it just goes to there's a living, breathing child here. The state is very much concerned with how that kid's going to get fed and clothed, and is it going to be the state's problem, or is there some convenient man over here who can serve as a utility aspect and pay for that?
Should men be expected to pay child support during a pregnancy to help with medical bills?
If paternity shows that it's your child, yes, I believe you should pay.
So why is a pregnancy considered a child when it comes to child support, but not when it comes to abortion?
Good question. We're still trying to figure that out.
If a father needs a judge's approval to terminate parental rights, should a woman also need a judge's approval to terminate a pregnancy?
I actually had a conversation with someone about this. I only feel a little more on the woman's side just because the woman has to really bear the weight, of everything, of the changing of the body, like I said before, of the pregnancy. Some women die from that. A man hasn't ever died from getting a woman pregnant.
I'm a firm believer in women should do what they want to do with their bodies because I can't control what they do with their bodies. So at the end of the day, that's a decision that they got to make. I can't say anything or speak on that.
We can't get child support unless we establish paternity. Once we've established paternity, you got a living, breathing kid, right? So now the state's like, is this kid going to live off the taxpayers' dime off welfare just because dad feels like, he doesn't want to have to do this? Whether that's right or wrong, maybe she really did pull some sneaky stuff. But we got a living, breathing child, and the state needs to deal with that somehow. And that typically involves you paying some money.
Why can women vote on abortion laws, but men can't vote on child support laws?
Ooh. Maybe because it affects women a little heavier, a little more, I would say.
Why are we always talking about women not having the right to vote when men's issues aren't even on the ballot? Wouldn't that equate to men not having the right to vote, which applies to right now?
Yes, but I feel like a lot of men kind of set the terms and set the rules and stuff like that, and women are just really abiding by them.
At the end of the day, it's a woman's world. Abortion laws are abortion laws. Child support is child support. It's a check for the government that's guaranteed to them regardless because they hold it against you. If you don't pay it, it's back child support. So at the end of the day, they're going to hold it over your head till you pay that thing off.
I am pro-choice. If a woman should have the right to opt out of motherhood and make that choice, should a man also have the right to opt out of fatherhood and 18 years of child support?
100%. Yeah, if you look at it that way, then I feel like that's only fair.
That child support laws say that you can't. And if a woman wants you to stick around, she will make you.
So what reproductive rights do men have?
None.
So why are we always talking about the woman's choice but never the man's choice?
We have a choice supposedly before it happens, and if you don't do that, then it's your fault.
Yeah, that's the type of world we live in. You know, we have sympathy for women, but we don't have sympathy for males because at the end of the day, what males go through, we're told that we have to be strong, we have to do all this, but it's never about how we feel. It's about the president that's been created.
You should be proactive on child support ASAP. Getting laid, all that shit, because at the end of the day, I can vouch for it. Child support affects my day to day and how I move. So if you let that go, they're gonna keep, like I said, it's a system. So if you don't address it, they're gonna tax your ass for 18 years.